Down Live show.
Say, this is Richard Lucas, and you're watching the Break It Down show. Good.
This is Richard Lucas, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hell yeah. I love remotes. I love going live. I got a couple friends here with me. I got Richard over here, and then I've got Curt over here. Look at, there's Curt. I've known Curt for a long time. He's a buddy of mine from the olden days in Benicia. And so, but the guy we're talking about today is Richard Lucas. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be here. So yeah. So you guys are going to talk about me, and I'll just sit here and listen. This will be great. It's kind of find out what you really think.
This is your life, Richard Lucas.
What have you always wanted to ask Richard on a live podcast?
God, that's a curveball.
Wow.
Why do you go nuts on Diet Coke?
That's a wonderful question. I've been trying to monitor my caffeine intake and trying to figure things out because I don't mind coffee in the morning, but I have days where there's too much diet soda, etc., toward the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But then doing the dog log during Fringe, the show times are so odd.
Yeah.
That you're on stage for an hour alone. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus. And so I went back to more caffeine. Then I had a couple months here without the show. And now I'm back to working on the memorization again and all that great fun stuff. So I'm back to higher caffeine intake. I gotta watch.
Well, there's something called adrenaline that kicks in.
That's true. That also kicks in. That's why I need to watch.
Yeah.
That's why I need to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my brothers is a now retired surgeon, and he gave up caffeine a long time ago. And the hours, like emergency call 5-7 nights a week or a month. And I could never figure out how he could give up caffeine considering the hours on his feet and the focus and the brain work. But, and so I've always tried to use that in my mind as an example, but I've never been able to make the leap.
Cool. I got a quick, maybe more pertinent question. What are you most proud of in your life? Because you've done some big things, my friend.
Wow.
That's a curveball.
Thanks, Curt. I'm very thankful that I've reached a place in my life, I think, with some maturity where instead of being so goal focused, which I think can make you feel like it's always ahead of you, it's ahead of you, it's ahead of you. And then you never let yourself feel satisfied. You never let yourself feel happy with the things that you have accomplished. I think that the big marker for me was when my manuscript of the dog log got published.
Yeah.
Getting a literary agent, and then she was able to get a publisher rapidly. And that felt like a big change in my life.
Yeah.
To be able to call myself an author.
Right.
I mean, I have other things. I'm very proud of Bono on the Edge Waiting For Godominos because the play has worked, dare I say, 100% of the performances, no matter where we've taken the play. I'm very proud of that. And this now doing the solo show is a bump up in spreading the word and telling this story. On a personal level, when you asked that question, the very first thing I thought of was my follow through with my friendship with Irene and the visits to the convalescent home and honestly the taking care of the dogs. This stuff was so out of character for me, so outside of my self-centered selfishness realm.
Yeah.
To give up so much time and energy to deal with the dogs and have the dogs and give them love and become that person. But also, Irene was in the years in the convalescent home, busily burning the bridges of the few people left in her life. She was angry. She had a right to be. She was depressed. She had a right to be. But people would help her, and she would ask for more help. Or if you brought there was times I brought a cheeseburger without the cheese on it, and I heard about it, really heard about it. So there were times I had to fight through I had to resist the, hey, you know what, F off feeling that can come with that kind of tension. And the last 6 months of her life were really difficult for her. And being the only person left in her world to visit her was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
I never saw myself in that kind of role or position, but it was a gigantic part of my life, our friendship. In fact, she was one of the main female influences in my world at the time. You know, a person who could say, your hair's too long, you need a haircut, that shirt looks terrible on you, you know, the kind of stuff that, you know, you kind of need to hear.
Yeah.
I was dependent on her to give me those heads up type things. So it's, you know, professionally, the Dog Log solo show going well at Fringe and then being honored with this open-ended residency at the Broadwater is mind-blowing to me, and a kind of artistic responsibility I need to step up to. But it feels good, and I'm grateful about it. And this is a odd way to phrase this, but I'm okay saying I'm proud of those things.
Yeah. So we're talking about Irene. We're talking about dogs. Let's kind of go back and tell the people what this is all about. And this is not a short answer, because this is a book. This is a one-man show, but there's a history to this even before that, like a creative history. I remember you doing a staged reading of this, which was fantastic. But this is based on your life and a quirky kind of beyond quirky, but it's just it's quirky yet relatable. But let's go back. What is the Dog Log? What is this?
The Dog Log, you know, with the solo show. The tagline of the solo show is a solo show about living next to a barking dog, based on my memoir about living next to a barking dog. So that's, you know, that's the green flag that got all this going, was living next to a barking dog. A little tiny Yorkshire Terrier named Sophie, who barked relentlessly. And her owner, Irene, in the show I say, and in the book I say, a bonkers old woman in her mid to horrible 70s. That's my initial dark cynicism about the situation. But we just hated each other, because she would do nothing about the dogs, and she would just yell at me if I tried to talk with her or confront her. You know, you try being nice, you try confrontation, you try all kinds of avenues to get a person to listen and understand your plight, and none of it worked. And when you reach out to the authorities about a situation like that, they need you to keep a log about how consistent the barking was and how long the barking period was, because they can't just come and pound on somebody's door and yank the dog away and take it to a shelter. They don't want to get involved in a neighbor dispute like that. They really don't want to get involved at all.
It's a serious legal,
and it can become
thing.
If it goes to a legal situation. Their advice is it needs to be at least 6 months if you're going to go to court. Otherwise, they're not even going to allow it to go to a session.
It'd be like taking a kid from somebody's house. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I started keeping this log. And when you're writing down 10:15, Sophie's barking, you know, I work at home. I was doing graphic design at the time. 10:30, Sophie's barking, because you need to prove it's still barking, you know? And if you only say 10:15, Sophie's barking, then you wait till 3 p.m. and say she barked the whole time, that weakens your log. If you have it more steady, but then one thing on your mind is your work and your life. The other thing on your mind is this presence of the dog. And so I'm keeping this log, and frustrated as can be. And my friends are busting my ass about it, you know, because to them, it's just this tiny little whimper on the other side of the wall. But the randomness of barking, it's a thing you can't, your neighbor's loud stereo, at least there's a rhythm and you know it'll shut off at some point, you know. But a barking, you don't know if it's going to stop, and your mind can't make you need a mathematical equation, and you can't get that from barking. So I started to feel like my life was out of control, and I started to write more in this log about how much it bothered me, because I feel like the authorities need to know. And what if I have to go to court? I need to have things that I went through 6 months prior. But I hit a wall. Sophie's on the other side of the wall, but so to speak, I hit a wall of just saying, why am I so angry and depressed? And why does my life feel so out of control? This can't be the whole thing. And I had shifted from stand-up comedy, which I enjoyed. And I have an album out there of an hour of 3 stories called Resign Town, USA and Other Stories. But I moved into storytelling, and my storytelling shows turned into talking quite honestly about this barking dog and the situation at hand. And for quite a while, I would just, if I had a show, I'd talk about the last 24 hours, 48 hours in my world of confrontation of sound and human. So I did a show that ran at the Fake Gallery, the good old Fake Gallery, which is gone now, sadly, Paul Kozlowski. Because I think I did some reading from this log, which was just angry complaining in a lineup of storytellers. And Paul said, I think there's a show there. I think you should do a show. So we did 6 Saturdays at the Fake at the time. It was an hour-long show of me. I was literally reading the log. And that's all it was. It was kind of honest but creative complaining. And got a lot of laughs, and we enjoyed a heck of a good time. And Comedy Central invited it to the Comedy Central stage, which they used to do very generously at the Hudson Theater. That was my second time being invited there. I was really excited. So I did the show there in a sort of a formal way. And my friend David Robertson helped out with a little bit of sort of directing and lighting ideas, which raised, I think, the level of the show. And it was shortly after that my neighbor Irene fell. And it didn't seem to be a big deal. Broken arm, maybe. Ambulance took her away. Paramedics weren't too worried. And but nobody came by to check on these dogs. She had 2 Yorkies over there. And around 11 o'clock midnight that night, the dogs were pacing around over there, I imagine. And I was pacing around in my apartment because I just hear, one of them going crazy. And I had a key, an emergency key to her place. And I went over, and when I opened the door and saw the truth of how she lived, the truth of why these dogs looked so mangy, it put my life on a different path that changed the direction of my life for the rest of my life creatively. And I think I hope as a more open and sensitive person.
So the log, you kind of alluded to this, but it became much more than reporting on the exact times the dog barked. You're talking to the sheriff, and you're imagining a person possibly reading this. You don't know if it's actually the sheriff, right? Or who, if it's some deputy or just anybody, but basically this became a diary of your life and all of your issues, and you started to break it down. Like it was like therapy, because you were examining your problems, as you said, and it was almost like an existential analysis of yourself. Like, who am I? Who am I? What am I doing with my life? And it's pretty much a diary.
And thanks for that, because I forgot to mention that it's written as a log, because it is a log, to Dear Sheriff, 10:15, Sophie's barking. But eventually it's Dear Sheriff, Sophie's been barking all day. I have problems finishing this issue, my heart is broken right now. And it starts to get into all the other issues to explain why this problem is so bad, that if I can just solve this problem, then these others wouldn't feel so bad, or I'd be able to focus on them. So the nature of writing, and as a former high school teacher and, now still writing coach, the writing itself opens up. The more you write, the more you open up. And that's exactly what happened with the dog log. It became a self-examination. I was in a really bad time in my life, really bad. And it forced me to try to figure out why my artistic path sucked so bad, my work path sucked so bad, my relationship had fallen apart. All, things that sometimes you can drift through life and not quite add those up to come up with a sum. You can deal with, well, I have a broken heart right now, or my job sucks right now, but you refuse to look at the whole picture and say, man, this is bad. And it forced me to look into my childhood and recognize and address some things about the way I grew up and how those are still attached to me, and how those things created a self-esteem that I latched onto that was a very low level, and a very negative thinking, very not optimistic human being. So yeah, so it really, I ended up writing about things in the dog log that I had never told a friend or family member. And that wasn't with the intention of this is going to be a book someday. That was how things were unfolding. And it was good for me to get that out. But when I started to, think, well, and friends read it, and you get encouragement. This could be something to share. I made the decision to leave all that in the manuscript and see if it gets cut, or, if it stays in.
Yeah.
And so for the book, yeah, then it turns into, all of a sudden it's published, and now all of a sudden those things are out there, not just for family and friends, but for strangers. But the truth is that the deeper you dig, the more honest you are, the more universal it is. And you talking about your problems, I think, can be therapeutic to other people who might sit there in an audience or read a book and reflect on their own for a moment, and maybe see somebody else get through it, and they can, I think, get through it too.
Yeah, if I could say, so I saw the show at Hollywood Fringe, this one-man show. So, Richard's talking about this. He's pretty serious. And it is serious, but it's very funny. It's very funny. It's very, very relatable. Whether you've had a dog or not, if you hate dogs, if you love dogs, you're going to relate. But like, even, if you've never had a dog, you will relate, because it's talking about family. It's talking about somebody that's getting on your nerves, a human being, which is Irene. It's talking about his relationship dilemmas, and it's very humorous, and it's very touching. And it's, again, a word that he gets a lot, I think, in reviews. It's relatable. And I saw this with a crowd of people, full theater, and there were two women to my side, and they would go, oh, they would laugh. They go, oh my God, they weren't being obnoxious, but they were just being like, Richard takes you into his life, and he like is taking you by the hand. It's pretty amazing. And I was stoked to help, put you two together, Pete and Richard, on this podcast, because this show is a good time to watch, and I was just like thinking, I cannot imagine somebody watching the show and not really enjoying it. Not really. It's going to mean different things to different people, but it's going to mean a lot. It might just be like, it's hilarious, or oh my God, I might, somebody, people cry. And so I was just, I have no vested interest in this show. And yeah, he's my friend, but if I didn't like the show, I would not be putting you guys together.
Yeah.
It'd just be like, I don't know anybody with a podcast, but so I just want to reiterate, it's at the Broadwater. It's Saturday nights. It's a residency, which is a big deal because they don't just give this to anybody. In fact, I don't know anybody who's had a residency at the Broadwater. I've never heard of that. So tell me about that. Like you got a residency. That's a big deal.
Yeah. I've known the Broadwater for 8 years. And I don't know of it having happened, but it might have. I don't know. But yeah. I'm very lucky that they wanted to get behind the show to just get the word out about the show like this. I appreciate you, Curt, pulling me out of the abyss, because you're right. I was talking about all this heavy side.
Yeah. But
humor comes from pain oftentimes. Oh, yeah. Humor comes from dealing with trauma and from darkness. But the show is very funny. I have a blast. Doing the show. One of the tricks with developing the solo show, and I should tell a little story how the solo show came about. Irene passed away a year ago, and it was devastating to me because now the dogs were gone, Irene was gone, this part of my life was gone, and I was mourning not just her, but the whole part of my life that brought me so much joy and so much laughter and this whole artistic journey. And I was at a New Year's Day party and I was not really in the mood, and I kind of excused myself a little early. And my good friend, Stephen Vlasic, who's also a writer and producer and director of theater, he followed me out and had a little talk with me and essentially said, this story now has risen back right up into your chest again. And I think you should do a solo show about it, to just get out there and speak about it. And he pulled out 3 $100 bills and said, if you'll do a solo show, I will cover the registration for Hollywood Fringe right now. That was to me, that was almost as big as getting my literary agent when to have someone step up like that and say something so meaningful, and to know me well enough to know I would need a push, that when you get a support system that understands, sometimes you need to be coached, you need to be pushed, someone needs to read your mind and reflect it back to you. That was a big moment. But I was still hesitant. It took me a couple of weeks to decide, because I knew it would be going through this personal journey again, which, as funny as I try to make it, is also so personal that when you write a memoir, and I advise a lot of memoirists, I always say the same thing: be careful, because you're going to have to relive all the things that you had put back into your memory. You're going to have to relive them and then rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and then edit and then edit and relive those things over and over and over again. So they're going to be present in your life more than you might wish for. But I decided to go ahead, and one of the best artistic decisions I've ever made in my life was to ask Bruno Oliver if he would direct. And because he had shown some interest, we had a couple talks at the Plunge, just casually hanging out. And Bruno had such great insight, and he knows the book inside out. So I asked him to direct, and he said yes. Bruno Oliver, some friends might know, is Domingo in Bono and the Edge, Waiting For Godominos, that I'm in with Curt and Guy Picot. And Bruno is a brilliant actor, a performer, director, theater. His life is committed to the theater. And so we chose a small, intimate theater at the Broadwater. It's called The Studio. it approximates the size of my living room. So I thought that was perfect. The challenge was the book. The book is 72,000 words. The solo show can only be an hour.
Mhm.
My first edit was about 16,000 words, which would have been a 2.5 hour show. And I didn't know what to do from there. And Bruno stepped in kind of as a dramaturge, and the two of us helped to cut down. And there were parts that really broke my heart to have to cut, because I thought, well, if I have the opportunity to do a solo show, how can I not tell that story? It's really funny.
Yeah.
Or how can I not allude to that? Because that really hurt. But you have to let those go. You know, I've written a pilot, and we're hoping to get someday to pitch the Dog Log as a streaming series. And Bruno will say to me, that will be in the 3rd episode of the 2nd season. And we will do it that way, as a way to say, it doesn't mean it disappeared.
Yeah.
But for the show, it's got to be an hour. Right now it's 65 minutes. So the trimming down was an intense process. And friends would say, well, just tell the heart of the story. Just, you know, well, to me, my original manuscript was 90,000 words. So the book ending up 72,000 is just the heart of the story. There's not a wasted word or sentence in it, in my opinion, and my agent and my publisher. But even through Fringe, we were still trimming it. But truly, Bruno and I one day sat down and said, you know, this is the heart of the story. That it evolved out of itself. The concrete foundation that had to be there stayed, and we were able to find the stuff, you know, to get rid of. And so the live show, I think, is really working, and it tells the story. And a very interesting, this is, you know, performance in the weeds, but something I'm really proud of. A great decision by Bruno as a director was to go from telling the story in the past tense, because a log is, this is what happened today. This is what she said. This is what I said. This is what so-and-so did. He said, we're going to put this in the present tense, so that as a performer, you have no choice but to live through whatever you're talking about at that moment. You're not reflecting back on a story. You're saying, I see Irene out front. She's tending to her dingy potted plants. She's wearing this. She's doing that. I say this. She says that. That blew my mind.
Mhm.
It might sound simple, but I think that I assumed I'd be reading from the log. I assumed I'd be telling stories. And it turned out to, I'm not reading from the log. I had to memorize it all. There are 53 entries squeezed into 65 minutes. So 53 entries. And I have to walk through them in the present tense. So instead of talking about my heart having been broken, I have to say, this is happening right now, and my heart is breaking right now. Or I'm freaking out about such and such right now. And as an actor, that really changes the challenge. And it affects each performance, because each performance is very, very live. Because the first person is a wild ride. Wow, was it hard to change all these stories that I know pretty well in the past tense into the present tense. That was, let alone memorizing this thing, but having to change every verb tense from past to present was, but Bruno knew it would be tough. And as a director, I think for me, he's a wonderful coach. He knows me real well. He knows my sensitivities, but he knows I can be pushed. He just works with me so well. And he knew that going to the present tense would be a challenge. So he would offer gentle reminders about that as I went through.
Yeah.
So the construction of it was more complicated than we thought. Getting to the script was more challenging than we'd have thought. And then performing it was harder and more challenging than I thought. But I have to credit Bruno for coming up with these ideas and setting those challenges in front of me and forcing me to do it.
Right. No, it's tight. It's a tight show. It's surprising because I read the book and then I watched the show, and knowing that the show's going to be an hour, it felt like the whole book was there, but it was in an hour. So I was like, what did they leave out? I don't even know, but so it was wonderful.
That's a great thing to hear, to feel that a whole story was told.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't stop people from buying the book after they see the show,
Yeah.
because there's so much more to it in there. But that was our aim, and it's real satisfying to hear that, to have told a whole story. It really is just the main characters now, so there aren't side characters and side stories. All that other mostly very fun stuff is left for the book. And pardon me, hopefully we leave them wanting a little more. It's an invitation to read the book and really go through the journey of the language.
Mhm.
But I love hearing that. And when I finish the show, I feel like I told the whole story, even though I know it was only 10% of the verbiage,
So what's it? You've done plays. We did a play, Bono and the Edge. We can talk about that in a bit. Bono and the Edge, Waiting for Godominos. You're doing the show. It's just you. It is just you. That is a lot to just the nerves, the responsibility. You've got to captivate these people, and there's nowhere to hide, and there's nobody to play off, but you do play off the audience, don't you? Or just talk about.
I very much talk to the audience as the sheriff.
Yeah.
So it's a direct address, sort of, in that sense. A friend of mine, Brandon Keener, it was, after having read the book, he said something that I've quoted often. He said, the dog log is sort of an analogy for prayer, that you're reaching out to this authority that you've never met and you don't know and probably will never meet. You don't know if it's being read, and that's addressed in the show several times and in the book. Is anyone even reading this? And you don't know if your situation that you're asking about or praying about is going to change. You don't know what the entity, how the entity is going to respond, or if they're even out there.
Faith.
Right. I can't remember why I brought that up.
Just you're talking to the sheriff. It's a one-man thing.
Addressing the audience.
Yeah.
So yes, I am talking to. I treat them as though they're the sheriff, and that makes the sheriff a confidant, because from the beginning of the book, I assume the sheriff gets my point.
Yeah.
You understand this, and your hands might be tied on helping me, but I know you get it. I know you get the issue. So there's a little bit of a sort of collegial wink, wink. Like, I know you understand, but then there's also a frustration with bureaucracy and frustration with government and frustration with classes. I say in the show, in the book, I'm sure no celebrity's ever had to turn in a 6-month barking dog log,
Right. Yeah.
But interaction, I would say with caution, there's a new trend in solo show performing towards the side of clowning, where they do incorporate audience members as characters in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they have them wear, a crown or a bow tie or something to really make them characters. That's a trend I've been seeing a lot over the last few years. There's nothing like that in the dog log. No, the audience is in the dark. No one is made uncomfortable or directly confronted or anything like that. They're just comfortably watching the show.
Yeah.
As far as the challenge of doing a solo show, I've performed a few times, like I said, early on with the dog log, and though I was really just reading it. And in my years in stand-up and storytelling, you're alone. You're alone. So I was used to being alone, but I think also my 8 or 9 years now being associated with the Hollywood Fringe, I've seen so many solo shows and so many great solo shows that hopefully I've taken in the number one thing, that it can be done, you know, and so I've seen enough good work, I think, that's influenced me to feel I can do it.
I think so, very much. So as far as Fringe and live theater, Fringe, it's a great thing. It, you know, it really is. And I must speak about just, I love the space, the Broadwater. And what's really cool, you see the show, it's an hour. There's a bar that's right there. Now, it's not about drinking, it's about bring your friends. And what's really cool is you'll want to talk about the show afterwards. The bar is right there. Yeah. Go to the bar. It's like seeing a really cool movie. You want to discuss it, right? And you want to say, I love this part, or, you know, I don't think this is the case with Richard's show so much, but it might be, I was a little confused, or, you know, did you understand this? It's not really, you know, the case with Richard's show, I don't think, but yet Richard, you know, he talks about philosophers, maybe, was it Kierkegaard or something? And like
Nietzsche,
so,
they drop in there.
What's cool is don't drop down to your audience, you know, just put it out there, let them catch up to you. But anyway, it's great. It's a 1 hour show. Go to the bar perhaps and talk about the show. Richard often, I believe, goes to the bar and maybe meet Richard. I don't want to put that pressure on you, but Richard's accessible, and it's a good time.
The bar is called The Plunge.
The Plunge
at the Broadwater, and they took over that building in I think late 2017, 2018. They reconfigured some of the theaters and also put in a bar, and it's a beautiful bar. I think it's sort of based on the idea of a Chicago area writers bar. Right. So there's lots of wood, you know, it's got a more early 20th century feel to it. It's super clean. The service is great.
There's plays on the shelf, you know, written plays.
Yeah.
It's a very like theater, literary type thing.
Right. There's a whole library.
Yeah.
It's a whole library.
It's, you know, it's on Santa Monica Boulevard, just west of Vine, right?
Yeah.
And so nice central Hollywood location. Yeah.
Lots of incredible things happen in that part of Hollywood. You know, the Hollywood Bowl's right there, the Dolby. I mean, there's tons of theater and other things to see there. Everybody should get out and go see live things. I wanted to ask you about, we've got some old people in homes in my life, and you talked about how when you write a memoir, a lot of you comes out. It has to be a lot of you in that building too, to deal with the person who's dealing with, you know, they're not leaving there. They aren't going to have their life back. They're angry. They're depressed. They're demented, whatever, all these things. And I find that I bring a whole lot of me into things, like new kinds of guilt that I didn't know were even possible, because it's adult guilt. And you're like, I feel bad because I'm doing this, but I'm stuck, and the disease makes this person act this way. And it's a puzzle that you don't just walk in and out for nothing. You've got to deal with things, whether you want to or not. And if you don't go, then who does? Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and the trick with calling them convalescent homes, some people are in their convalescing home and might get home.
Right.
Many are not. But if dementia hasn't hit, they still have a little hope that there's somewhere else that they can go. And it's hard when you know.
Sometimes dementia, they still want to go home.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing they latch onto.
When I had the dogs, especially when I was taking them in, and then after Nelson passed away and I was just with Lauren, gosh, they used to spread such smiles. And I ended up visiting more people than just Irene. So after I would visit Irene, I'd have other people I need to go spread that smile with that Lauren would give automatically. When we lost Lauren, then the visits were just me. And I'll never forget, you know, the last visit with Lauren, when I knew we had to make the appointment the next morning. And then my next visit was my first visit to Irene without Lauren with me. And it was just us. And I'll tell you, when you have a dog in the middle that connects
you. A lot of things get triangulated.
Yeah, you
'Cause
got
you can-
exposed when
you
she
can-
wasn't there.
Right. You can always smile at the dog. You can always talk about the dog. The dog's doing some cute thing, and it keeps everything light. But now it was just the two of us, and there was a lot of sadness to it because these Yorkies were everything to our world. But we continued on, and our friendship managed until things got really hard for her. But you're right. Visiting a convalescent home is emotionally really tough. Really tough. There were times when it was nourishing for me. There were times when I was feeling low and I would think, oh, you know what? I'll go visit Irene. And I would feel good having done something good. And by the way, she and I always laughed. She was a brilliant mind. She was incredibly well read. And we always found things to laugh about. And the visits were always a good time. They were really a good time. You know what I mean? Until things got really hard for her. But yeah, they make you think about mortality and pain and the reality of that. But that also makes one insist on being grateful for what you have in the moment. Sure. And focus on, you are where your feet are, and focus on this moment and how great this moment is and how lucky I am to be here right now, because we don't know what's around the corner. Yeah. And the book's also funny.
Yeah.
Before you
want to remind you.
I mean, on the back it says humor memoir.
I don't want to let you lighten it up. I want you to lighten up in a minute. But first, I want to say this: one of the things that we picked up, and it's the wisdom that comes out of these moments, was the person that we're caring for. They said, we should be sitting here smoking, drinking, and dancing. And the message is like this: these are our days right now. Whatever days you're in, those are your days of smoking, drinking, and dancing. And you have to be grateful. You have to appreciate. You have to leverage these days, because you don't know when something today, right now, somebody no longer has that time, that opportunity, whether they're alive or incapacitated. And so, yeah, these are our days of smoking, drinking, and dancing, and we should appreciate them, because all the other stuff we're worried about becomes real secondary when your time collapses. Well, I had an infection in my leg. I had my leg rebuilt, and I was desperate to do anything other than be in that bed, with a wound pump, and I had all these things plugged into me, and I wasn't even that bad. This was repaired. This wasn't like a big accident or anything. And I was forced to be in my own space, in my own head, in this room, and just, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. It's just to heal. And it reveals a lot about where you're at in that moment, in that time. And again, I don't want to keep this thing heavy. We should talk about the funny stuff, but I learned a lot about myself and my life in these moments. And I try, when these moments come back, to highlight them and say, these are our days of drinking, dancing, and smoking. So get to drinking, dancing, and smoking, and don't waste them because you think that they're always going to be there. You should pack your life with things that are good, and live and love and have pain and all the other things that come with that. Because if you don't tend to that, just like if you don't tend to your physical well-being, your mental well-being, then you're not tending to things that need to be tended to.
Yeah. Well, I will gladly accept that 16-pound bowling ball of heaviness and go right back at you. In the show, there are layers of myself slowly uncovered, which was the nature of writing. And there are layers about Irene that are uncovered, that the exterior of this misanthropic, depressed, very unkempt person, that's not all that there was to her and her life. And I find out in the book during the show that sometimes when she leaves and Sophie is barking, Irene was actually going to visit hospice patients. So here I am.
What a dick.
Bitching and moaning. Yeah. And she's actually out doing something charitable and that matters. And I say in the show, So all this time, there was a story about her visiting someone particular named Henry. And I say, so all this time that I've been barking in this log, Irene might have been sitting at Henry's bedside, or someone else whose time is now just time.
Yeah.
And that experience of seeing people so consistently with my, weekly or twice a week visits to see Irene over all those years, I was constantly seeing people whose time, it was just time. It was not going to be filled with any joy or any activity,
That's right.
even mental activity. It's just time.
Man, I feel like there should be harp music.
I'm so sorry.
Jeez. Well, okay. How about
Forward reviews said it's George Carlin-esque.
there? Yes.
Yeah.
Make with the fun.
Funny. Let's go funny. Maybe change it up. We had a history of some crazy show you wrote, Bono and the Edge, Waiting for Godominos. We could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would love to. I was, I guess, I enjoyed acting, but acting is one of the few art forms you can't just do whenever you want. I play guitar. I can play guitar whenever I want. If I want to write a poem, I can write a poem whenever I want. I can paint whenever I want. I can't act whenever I want. So the challenge is developing your own material in some way. And I found myself enjoying writing sketch. A couple shows that were, again, done at the Fake, that were sort of Saturday Night Live style, where I would come out and tell a story like a monologue. And then I wrote, 4 or 5 sketches that I would be in with brilliant, funny friends. And one of them was this 8-minute sketch called Bono and the Edge, Waiting for Godominos, which was an absurd, eerie flip on Waiting for Godot, which is 2 desperate guys are told to go out to this dying tree and wait for this mysterious Godot. And they go through every iteration possible of an existential crisis to wonder why they're here and why we're here and what life is. So I flipped that to take Bono from U2, Bono and the Edge, where Bono orders a pizza delivery to get back in touch with the common man. So Bono's waiting to have this regular person back in his castle to sit down and tell stories about living a regular life so Bono can get back to his roots of who he knows he used to be. And the Edge is just hungry. The Edge doesn't want a common person to come in because they're going to be judged for their success. So that's the confrontation between the two and the tension between the two. But originally it was just like an 8-minute sketch and just weird. And it didn't really have an ending. I just wanted it to be weird. Yeah. And it was weird. But Curt had the idea of us doing it at Sacred Fools Theater Company, had a late night, Saturday night, midnight show called Serial Killers. And the idea was people would bring up a sketch, 8 or 10 minutes, fully realized, so had to be lit, had to be blocked, had to be memorized. And I think 5 sketches would go up in the show and the audience would vote. 3 of them would come back, thus serialized, and 2 of them would be killed off. Mm-hmm. And the ones that were serialized would have to come back the very next week with 8 or 10 more minutes. It would have to continue forward. And so Curt said, let's do it at Serial Killers. Why not? And we did. And
very intense. We were outsiders.
Yeah, we did. I mean, that's a 100-seat theater and it was full.
Yeah.
And we were outside. We weren't a member of the company or have friends in the company or anything like that. So we were outsiders. And I remember saying to Curt just before we went out onto the stage, I said, I'm sort of criticizing Bono a little bit. They're going to hate this. And Curt said, I can see the headline in the LA Times tomorrow. Yeah, actor criticizes Bono. But it's not really criticism. I'm a big fan. It's come from, I think, my understanding of him, I think. But we did it. We got voted to come back. And now all of a sudden I had to write another 10 minutes of this thing. So first it was Bono-centric and what he wanted to happen. But then I wrote the second part, which I entitled The Rise of the Edge.
Yeah.
And where it was the Edge's point of view. And from there, a few months later, Curt said, let's do Hollywood Fringe. And I wrote the whole thing. Now, where did Bruno Oliver come along? Bruno Oliver, I mentioned, is directing the Dog Log Solo show. Bruno was in the audience the first time we did the sketch. And he's a big Waiting for Godot person. And there's a point halfway through the first sketch where Bono falls down, he hurts his ankle. now he's going to have to limp. And that's a big element in Waiting for Godot itself. And Bruno likes to tell the story that when I tripped and fell and said, "Oh, my ankle," he blurted out, "They're actually doing this." Like this parody, this satire is actually, this flip is actually still happening, and it's still Waiting for Godot. And he likes to tell the story that he was embarrassed because everyone else was quiet. But a few months later, I was doing a tour of the Broadwater, just where are we going to do this play, of all the venues of Hollywood Fringe. And I walked past Bruno, and he recognized me and said, "Hey, it's Bono." And who doesn't like to be recognized, even for somebody that they're only pretending to be? And I did the little tour, but when I was leaving, he said, "Hey, if you need an Estragon or someone else to be in your play, let me know." We didn't know each other. So I wrote the whole play and had a couple of friends in mind, people I knew, but they're, good actors are busy or potentially busy. You want someone to be in a play. What if they get a film? So I waited for a couple of people, but then you pressed up against the deadline. And I looked up Bruno, and he actually had his phone number on his Facebook page. And I called him and I said, "Hey, this is Richard Lucas." He goes, "Oh, Bono's calling me on the phone." I mean, it was adorable. And I said, "Well, I've written it into a whole play, and I wonder if you'd be," and he said, "Yes," without even having read it. I don't even think I got to describing the character yet. And he said, "Yes." And to me, that is, in a nutshell, the essence of small theater, is people saying yes and taking a chance and doing nutty things, but you're committed to it. You're committed to it. And so Bruno's a big part of that play, and he's an amazing performer.
The Ponzo character? Is that what's the character in Godot that he's?
My mind is blanking.
I think it's Ponzo.
My mind is blanking because Domingo's so much different.
Yeah,
it's so much different.
Okay.
Than the original, so it's hard to allude to.
Yeah.
It. But he's amazing, and that developed our collegial friendship and relationship. And Waiting for Godominos in 3 or 4 different theaters in LA. We've taken it to San Francisco and Las Vegas and Ventura and San Diego. And it's always alive. I love doing the show. I think the guys love doing the show. So we always, we did Palm Springs, I think a year ago. And the outreach to theaters is a difficult challenge. It takes a lot of explaining, a lot of the possibility, a lot of work, but
how does the show travel? I mean, to take it to all these places, that means one thing, but like any band that goes to a new town, they've got to build an audience, right? Unless that place has an audience built in. So how do you sell that show?
You tell us.
Yeah, that's part of the pitch, is that when I talk to theaters, I'm offering them what I feel is a great product.
Right.
And when you go to the Waiting for Godominos website and you read the reviews from all these performances and all these places, it should be enough for a theater to say, "Oh, let's bring that in for a weekend. We can sell that out to our patrons." But a lot of theaters don't necessarily have big email lists or patrons or regular people who come back. But I do have to emphasize them. We don't have an audience. We were the Mercury News Pick of the Week when we went to San Francisco, but we don't have a built-in audience. And we really need the theater itself to believe in the show, take a chance, and put some muscle behind it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, because they were an afterthought from out of town and they're just hoping for the best. But I will say I've had a couple conversations in different cities where after the Friday night show, the person that I was dealing with comes to me and frankly says, I had no idea. I'll be on the phone all day tomorrow. I'll send out emails all day tomorrow because people have got to see this show. And that feels good. But there's only so much I can say to pitch. So what would really help would be Curt or Guy or Bruno getting famous.
Okay.
That would really be ideal, because then the show would be invited to go places.
Right. So let's spend the last couple of minutes here making sure we talk about where folks should go to get things. I've been putting up links while we were talking. I want to make sure we hit everything. And also, this handsome devil over here has some stuff probably to plug too. So I want to make sure.
Me? Well.
All right.
No.
So let's. I put the link up for Waiting for Godominos right there. That's up right now. Give everybody a real quick pitch on that, and we'll turn that into a little clip for everybody. Pitch Waiting for Godominos.
Oh, all right. All right. Follow Waiting for Godominos on Instagram. Check out the website, waitingforgodominos.com. It is a satire. It is a parody of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. But instead of two desperate guys told to go out and wait by a dying tree to maybe wait for this mysterious Godot, we've flipped that concept to have two super successful, almost godlike people on earth, Bono and the Edge from U2, where Bono orders a pizza delivery to get back in touch with the common man. Does that pizza ever arrive? Does Bono get what he needs? You got to see the show to find out.
Dogwalk the book. The link is down below. Here is the link for the Broadwater in LA. If everybody wants to see that, you guys can see those links down below my face. Anything else you want to plug at all, Richard?
I just want to say the Broadwater studio is an intimate space, so look at your Saturdays, and if you're considering coming to the show, pick your Saturday, because you never know how turnout will be. If it's really good, it sells out really quickly because there aren't a ton of seats. It's a very intimate space and show. And I would love you, if you have any curiosity about the show, to make a Saturday night of it and share this story with me and let me know what you think.
Cool. What are you?
Oh, geez. Thank you. Oh, okay. I just got a very, very small part in Ryan Murphy's series, Monster, the Ed Gein story. First season was on Jeffrey Dahmer. Second season was Menendez brothers. This is a very, very scary guy, Ed Gein, from like the 50s and 60s, I believe, or creepy dude, and it's on Netflix. I have a very tiny part in episode 7. About 4.5 minutes in, I find something kind of creepy on the floor, and that's it. Thanks. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and there's a YouTube for the trailer for Monster for that season for Ed Gein. And so, yeah, thanks for plugging that. And
Cool.
Thank you guys for coming on the show. I appreciate doing this. It's always fun to do like this intimate face about small theater. This is small theater. There's room for nobody else here. But I appreciate you guys for hosting me as I host you all on the show. And I just want to wrap it up. Is there anything you want to say in closing before we wrap this thing up?
Again, I'm so confident. Go check out the dog log. Saturday, 7:00 at the Broadwater. It's a good time. It's live theater. It's really good. It's fun time.
I want to thank you, Curt, for those kind words and doing all this today. But I want to thank you also, Pete. It is not easy to get the word out about shows. It's a competitive town. It's a celebrity-driven town. So something like small theater is way, way, way down on the totem pole of activity.
Yeah.
And advertising costs tons of money. There's never budget for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Press agents or the person who sends out your press release.
Publicist?
Yes, thank you. They're very expensive,
Yeah.
and there's never a budget for that. So inviting me to do the podcast and sitting here for an hour to let me talk about it is a wonderfully grand gesture and a big help for helping get the word out. I really appreciate it.
Pete, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. We're going to wrap this up. I'll see you all tomorrow. This show will be out. You can, I got a couple interesting things coming up. You guys will see about all that later on. Thank you, fellas, for coming.